You're thinking too small. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your goals are. I don't care how ambitious you think you're being. You are thinking too small. And that small thinking, that careful, realistic, socially acceptable level of ambition is the very thing that's keeping you trapped. Let me tell you something that will shake you to your core. The size of your thinking determines the size of your results, not your effort, not your talent, not your circumstances, your thinking. And right now, in this very moment, you are operating at a fraction of your actual capacity because you've been conditioned to think small. You've been taught to be realistic. You've been told to stay in your lane. You've been trained to set achievable goals. And in doing so, you've murdered your potential before it ever had a chance to breathe. Here's what happens when you think small. You set a goal that feels comfortable, something that stretches you just a little bit, but not so much that it scares you. You tell yourself, I'll make an extra $1,000 this month. I'll lose 10 pounds. I'll read one book. And you know what? You might actually achieve it. You'll hit that small goal. You'll feel a momentary sense of accomplishment. And then what? You'll set another small goal, and another, and another. And 10 years from now, you'll look back and realize you spent an entire decade taking baby steps when you could have been making quantum leaps. Small goals do not inspire you. They do not pull you out of bed with fire in your chest. They do not make you willing to sacrifice comfort, to risk failure, to push beyond what you thought was possible. Small goals are safe, and safety is the graveyard of greatness. But 10 times bigger thinking, that's different. When you think 10 times bigger, you don't just change your goals. You change your entire identity. You change how you see yourself, how you move through the world, how you make decisions, how you spend your time. Because a 10 times bigger goal doesn't allow you to stay who you are. It demands that you become someone completely different. Let me give you a truth that most people never understand. A 10 times bigger goal is not 10 times harder than a normal goal. In fact, in many ways, it's easier. Here's why. When you set a small goal like making 10% more money, you're competing in the same crowded space as everyone else. You're using the same strategies. You're playing the same game. You're fighting for scraps. But when you set a 10 times bigger goal like making 10 times more money, you can't use the same strategies. The old playbook doesn't work. The conventional path won't get you there. So you're forced to think differently. You're forced to innovate. You're forced to find paths that others aren't even looking for. And in that space, in that realm of 10 times bigger thinking, there's almost no competition because 99% of people won't even attempt it. They'll look at a 10 times bigger goal and say, that's impossible. And then they'll go back to their small, safe, crowded goals. But the 1% who dare to think 10 times bigger, they're operating in a completely different dimension. They're not competing. They're creating. They're not grinding. They're building empires. They're not surviving. They're dominating. Look at anyone who has achieved something extraordinary, and you'll find someone who thought 10 times bigger than everyone around them. Henry Ford didn't set out to make a slightly better horse and buggy. He envisioned an automobile for every family in America. People thought he was insane. He thought 10 times bigger, and he changed the world. Andrew Carnegie didn't just want to run a successful steel mill. He wanted to dominate the entire industry, to create a steel empire unlike anything the world had ever seen. He thought 10 times bigger, and he became one of the wealthiest men in history. Thomas Edison didn't just want to improve the candle. He wanted to light the entire world with electricity. Thousands of failures, years of effort. But he thought 10 times bigger, and his inventions transformed civilization. Rockefeller didn't want to sell a little more oil. He wanted to control the entire oil industry in America. He thought 10 times bigger, and he built the first billion-dollar corporation in human history. Do you see the pattern? Every single person who has left a mark on this world started by thinking at a level that made other people uncomfortable. They didn't ask what's realistic. They asked what's possible, and that question changed everything. Here's what happens in your brain when you start thinking 10 times bigger. First, you feel fear. Massive, Overwhelming fear, because a bigger goal exposes you. It reveals the gap between who you are and who you need to become. It shows you that your current habits won't cut it. Your current knowledge won't be enough. Your current network won't get you there, and that's terrifying. But here's the beautiful part, that fear is proof you're on the right track, because small goals don't scare you. They don't challenge your identity. They don't force growth. But a 10 times bigger goal, it demands transformation. It says you cannot achieve this as the person you are today. You must become someone else entirely. And when you accept that, when you embrace that necessity for complete transformation, something extraordinary happens. You stop trying to improve yourself and start rebuilding yourself. You stop asking, how can I get a little better? And start asking, who do I need to become? That's the shift. That's the moment everything changes. When you think 10 times bigger, the effects ripple through every area of your life. Your daily decisions change. You stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You stop gossiping. You stop engaging in activities that don't move you toward your bigger goal, because you can't afford to. The gap between where you are and where you're going is too massive to waste a single hour. Your relationships change. You stop surrounding yourself with people who think small. You stop seeking approval from those who don't understand your vision. You start gravitating toward people who challenge you, who think bigger, who see possibilities instead of limitations. Your standards change. You stop accepting mediocrity. You stop settling for good enough. You stop making excuses. Because when you're chasing a 10 times bigger goal, average is not an option. Average doesn't get you there. Your energy changes. You wake up different. You move different. You speak different. Because you're not just working toward a goal anymore. You're on a mission. You're building something that matters. You're becoming someone who matters. And that energy, that 10 times bigger energy, is magnetic. It attracts opportunities. It attracts resources. It attracts people who want to be part of something bigger than themselves. Now let me tell you something that nobody wants to hear. Most people will never think 10 times bigger. Not because they can't, but because they won't. Because thinking 10 times bigger requires you to be comfortable with uncertainty. It requires you to look foolish in the eyes of people who think small. It requires you to fail bigger, risk more, and endure criticism from those who are too afraid to try. Most people would rather achieve a small goal and feel safe than attempt a massive goal and risk failure. They would rather be realistic and respected than ambitious and ridiculed. They would rather blend in than stand out. And that's fine. That's their choice. But if you're still listening, if something in you is stirring, if there's a part of you that knows you were meant for more, then you're not most people. You're someone who's ready to step into 10 times bigger thinking. So here's what you're going to do. Right now, today, you're going to take whatever goal you've been working toward and multiply it by 10. If you wanted to make an extra $10,000 this year, your new goal is $100,000. If you wanted to lose 10 pounds, your new goal is to completely transform your body. If you wanted to build a small side business, your new goal is to build an empire. I don't care if it seems impossible. In fact, it should seem impossible. Because if your goal doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. Write it down. Make it specific. Make it so audacious that you feel uncomfortable even writing it. And then ask yourself this question. Who do I need to become to achieve this? Not how do I do this? Not yet. First, you need to understand that the person you are right now cannot achieve a 10 times bigger goal. The habits you have won't get you there. The knowledge you possess won't be sufficient. The network you've built won't open the right doors. So you need to become someone else. You need to study differently, read different books, learn different skills. You need to connect differently, build relationships with people who are already operating at the level you're trying to reach. You need to work differently, not harder, smarter, more strategically, more intensely. You need to think differently, question every assumption you've made about what's possible. Now here's where the real power comes in. When you commit to a 10 times bigger goal and read it every single day, when you visualize it with emotion, when you speak it with conviction, your subconscious mind starts to accept it as reality. Not someday reality, present reality. And when your subconscious believes something is real, it goes to work making it happen. It starts noticing opportunities you would have missed before. It starts making connections you wouldn't have made. It starts solving problems in ways you couldn't have imagined. Because your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what you vividly imagine and what you actually experience. So if you feed it a 10 times bigger vision with enough clarity, enough emotion, enough repetition, it will begin to manifest that vision in your physical reality. This is not mystical thinking. This is how your brain works. You'll start seeing opportunities everywhere because your brain is now programmed to look for them. But this only works if you think big enough. A small goal doesn't activate this system with enough power. A 10-time bigger goal, it hijacks your entire nervous system and points it in one direction. So from this moment forward, you are not someone who thinks small, you are not someone who plays it safe, you are not someone who sets realistic goals, you are someone who thinks 10 times bigger, you are someone who makes others uncomfortable with your ambition, you are someone who sees possibilities where others see impossibilities. Say this out loud right now. With power, with conviction, I think 10 times bigger. I am not bound by what seems realistic. I am not limited by what others believe is possible. I set goals that scare me, and I become the person capable of achieving them. That's your new identity, not someone who hopes for more, someone who demands more, not someone who wishes for change, someone who creates change, not someone who dreams big. Someone who builds big. Let me leave you with this. You have one life, one shot at this thing, one opportunity to see what you're truly capable of, and you can spend it playing small, setting safe goals, staying comfortable, or you can think 10 times bigger and discover what you're actually made of. The world doesn't need another person who thinks small. The world needs people who dare to think impossibly big. People who set goals that make others say that's crazy. People who refuse to accept limitations. People who build empires instead of businesses. People who create movements instead of making incremental changes. People who transform industries instead of just participating in them. That person can be you. That person is you. If you choose it, so choose it now. Take your goal. Multiply it by 10. Write it down. And then do something that separates you from everyone else. Believe it's possible. Act like it's inevitable. Work like it's your only option. Because when you think 10 times bigger, when you truly commit to that level of vision, the universe has no choice but to respond. Doors open, people appear, resources materialize. Not because you got lucky, but because you thought big enough to deserve them. Now go. Your 10 times bigger life is waiting, but it won't come to you. You have to become the person who can claim it. Think 10 times bigger, starting now.